this week, today, series versus standalone. That's what we're doing. Talking about series, and yeah, we all have some. I think we all have some experience with this. This is a fun one, and I'll kind of start and give you how that worked for me, and you guys can jump in and how that worked for you. My first book, Revenant, was supposed to be standalone. When I outlined it, it then became a trilogy. And when I went a little further, it then became a series. The story just kept growing and growing. And it outgrew the book, it outgrew the trilogy, and just went from there. So that's kind of it wasn't like I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to write a series. Same thing with Sleep. I just started specking the book and realized I had two, three, four stories in this that could keep going. So all of a sudden you go, okay, I can just bite the bullet and do the series, or I can just write the book and forget the rest. But as writers, we don't want to forget the rest of the story. We like that idea of it continuing, of it going somewhere. So yeah, we kind of keep following that trend. So how did you guys get in with the whole series bit?
Well, I kind of did the same thing, and so I mean, like when I started writing, it was a little bit different. I didn't have really any intent, and I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and went shit. Where I thought this was going to end, like there's more, because like you get to know your characters, right?
Right.
You get to know everybody, and you get attached to them and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I got to the end and I was like, you know what? Like it's kind of hollow, and I could split this and I could add to it, and so, I mean that kind of raises another question, right? Like, but, you're talking about getting into yours and then realizing that there was more there. I
Oh yeah.
finished what I thought was an entire book. It was like 150,000 words or whatever, and then looked at it a second time and went, I can make this way more dynamic. And so, I can split this in two and add to it and make it a bigger thing. Um, and I started like asking myself at that point in time when I decided to add a third and then started getting ideas for like a trilogy of prequels and like a spin-off. Like I've had requests of spin-offs from two different characters. And I started asking myself, like, should I have left this as just like one standalone novel? Like, how am I being most true to these characters? Should I have left it? I don't know, like I don't know, like pure. It's like
Uh,
one thing.
yeah.
Like, basically, is it what when you start off thinking that a book is just going to be a single book, and then it morphs, as right it happened to you and for me, into something way way bigger than that, is that like an abundance of creativity, or is that like a lack of discipline?
Well, and at first I thought it was a lack of discipline, honestly, because I kept having questions. Well, what happens to this character? And what happens to this character? And what happens after this? And I realized maybe I'm just kind of like, the squirrel with the nut. I'm running around going, wee, this is all fun because I got so many nuts. But then I actually wrote Underground and realized I got to the end of that story and went, this is a story. This is where it ends. This is the culmination. And I went, okay, this is what a single book feels like, where I don't have 50 questions about where these characters are going. And I don't feel like I have to continue writing them. So I just think you end up with a world and a character who you start looking at going, I'm not done yet. I got stuff to do with this character. So you can abandon it or you can continue it. Rob, what about you? What do you think?
Pretty much the same thing. I started out writing a prison break story. That was the very first vision that I had of it. And while I was in the early stages, I developed a different storyline that was essentially an unseen prequel to it, which obliged me to expand it a little bit. But the more I did this, I thought, well, wait a minute, I can take a long time and an interesting story to get this guy and his acquaintances free of this horrible place. But that in and of itself, to me, it seemed a little lacking. So I kind of crossed my fingers and kept on going when I was outlining. And the more as Glacia said, you start to get to know your characters, and possibilities open up when you do apply a little book introspection and you start wondering about these converging storylines, and where does it go after that? And I didn't intend to take it anywhere after that. It just started to emerge. And it was because of that little weird 17 year before prequel that when I stopped and explored that, and it was things just started popping into my head, and it was applying into the future, and I thought, there's no way. So I actually wrote the sequel as part of the first book. It would have been an enormous book, and I had to split it into two because it was just too much. But at that point, now I have a far broader story arc. I can't possibly do this in two. It's going to end up being a trilogy. And then the more I did of the trilogy, I thought, holy smokes, this is going to go way past a trilogy. There's 7 or 8 different storylines that are all coming up here. There will be a second trilogy. I'm hoping, I think I can get it done at that point. But you're right, Ray, when I got to a standalone novel, it was a totally different experience. I knew what I wanted the story to do, what I wanted it to say, and how I wanted it to go. That was maybe a little bit easier of an outlining process because I had an end point. There really wasn't any good place to take it past that. I suppose you could say that about any story. But the whole outlining and writing experience, knowing it was going to be a standalone, was almost a liberating experience because it taught me what both of them are like and not to expect them to overlap. It really was an interesting process when I hit my first standalone and then looked at it against the series because they have different qualities and different challenges.
Right. It's a story, but it's a story that has a conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the discipline part. I mean, at least for me, it was all of a sudden, the first 3 things I really sat down and started doing were series based. And it was all of a sudden, I've got small little blurb outlines for prequels and then sequels and then characters. And then, you're looking at this going, well, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe this isn't how it's supposed to be done. Maybe this is me taking it too far. And that's the first part I got until, like Rob, I got to that one story that I went, this is a story. This is a section I can tell that has a beginning and an end where I don't feel like I have to do all this extra stuff. Yep. And
I have a question. Glacia said she was all the way through her first story when she had to stop, put on the brakes, and say, oh, wait, this is not done yet. I have another and probably another, and who knows, stories to tell that are part of this. They're logical, it flows, it's interesting. She was all the way through her first book. I was not even halfway through it. My first book, when I thought, I'll never get this done, I need a sequel. And then I thought, don't be stupid. You have an expanding story. It's going to be a trilogy at the very least. Where were you, Ray, when you knew this isn't going to work? Were you in the writing process or outlining of your first book? Where were you in that process when you realized this isn't going to end here? I've got to expand this.
Well, my first book, I actually didn't know there was an outline process. I just started writing, honestly. And I got to about 7 or 8 chapters and I went, oh, I got to out. So I started laying out these chapter headers and then writing blurbs in these. So this is my first idea of an outline. And then I realized once I got to the end, I was like, but wait, there's this character who still has to do this and this character who's still doing this. And what about this? And what happened? And all of a sudden I realized, well, holy shit. Okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to take us to 100 chapters and make it 300,000 words in this big epic book, or no? So I just started laying out a separate file and just writing these notes about these questions I had and then put it away. So that's kind
of. But you weren't finished with the complete writing of that book the way Glacia was. That's interesting.
And I had to go back and write sub-stories to characters who had come before and who had created this situation in order to be able to understand what had happened. So I all of a sudden had an entire setup for a sequel set, and then I had a bunch of these characters that I can go back and do a prequel to because I have all the notes for them. Yes. And the same thing with Sleep. I had to go back and write the first Mage War and the first Survival Landing and the first Age of Man, and all this stuff I had to write just to get to where I was at. So I'm coming at the story in like the middle. It's almost like a Star Wars situation, where you've got all this prequel information you've got written down somewhere that you can go back and tap.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny. And I've even got the next 3 books laid out for this because I outlined the one and I had so many questions. you know.
And that's
Where
it.
does
You end up reacting to your own questions as you do this.
Yeah.
Your mind is saying, hold on, wait a minute. And those moments, at first I misinterpreted them, and I thought, good Lord, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I
Yeah,
have no
I'm not
idea
gonna.
how to structure
Yeah,
this. I'm asking questions that I should have had these all answered in my outline, and I'm a piece of shit, and I'm not doing this right. And
I
it's
did
just part of
say,
that process. It's kind of an interest. Okay, so let me ask both of you another question. Speaking of questions, discipline, just a second ago, was an interesting topic. And I have been asked this before. At what point do you feel those little flares going up and you understand that you're pushing it? How far do you go to tell your story without running the risk of padding or bringing up less compelling storylines, because it's gratuitous and it's irritating to complete a series? And my answer to them is, I wouldn't dream of it. The story will take as many books as it takes to tell. If it's four, I'll leave it. If it's six, I'm going to go six. If I end up with something that's so compelling, I have to continue it in a serial, I might do that too. But if you give yourself a finite number without having thought them through, to me, now you're pushing your luck, and you're trying to see into the future, which may not exist at all.
and this is. Go ahead.
I actually sort of almost fell into that trap. Yeah, like again, coming to this with like absolutely no idea what the like expectation was, but thinking that there was one, right? Like I
Right.
thought that there was a way, that was the right way to do it, and did not recognize this whole thing as being like a fluid thing. I was like, oh well, people either do, like a book and a sequel, or they do a trilogy, and so like it can't do any more than that, or I gotta split it a different way, or I gotta like like
Mm-hmm.
Right.
add stuff.
Yeah.
And then it was like I got into the process of actually splitting my first manuscript and fleshing out those secondary plot lines that I wanted to flesh out, that I realized that there's 4 or 5 different things that are all happening sort of in parallel places and times that eventually will intersect at various moments, and I can't really 100% predict. I know the order of things, but I can't really predict how many. You're saying as many books as it needs to tell the story. I don't really 100% know how many words it's going to take to tell the story. Basically
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying, just a different way. And so like by that token, because the genre that I write does not suffer long books. I have to keep it, to a max of like, 125,000. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to split that. I know that I can packet this amount of story, and I have, like this 40,000-ish word range that I have to fall into. But like, I don't know, because there's 5 different storylines going on all at the same time, intersecting at different points. I realized very rapidly that I couldn't predict how many books it was going to take to tell all of that stuff. And so, yeah, like right now I'm like, it's either going to be, it might be 5. Like,
And I get that. That's one of the. I mean, when I went through one of my manic moments, I actually outlined my book series because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to. So I managed to outline 9 books
yeah.
for the Shadow War Chronicles. Now I got to go back through and redo some of those, but I was like, holy crap! Before I started struggling with what I was doing with these characters, I got to 9.
Yeah.
Didn't do 10 because at 10 I was like, now I'm just reaching, so I'm not going to reach. If I have to start reaching, I'm going to stop.
Well, and with too much outlining, I mean, like, yeah, you got to have some sort of discipline, right? I mean, like, because otherwise you don't know where you're heading. But I feel
you need to know when to stop and start writing.
yeah.
Yep.
And that was my problem.
You have to have a target, right, that you are aiming for, but it has to be rated, right? Because like if you have a target that is 9 books away, Ray, I think you just experienced something like this in one of your books, and like I know I've had it a number of times where you're writing and your character does something that you're not anticipating, and
Yes,
it changes the
absolutely.
arc of that character, it changes their personality, and so that is going
Yes,
to
it does.
over books. And you're not going to get to the same target. That target that you anticipated being 9 books away.
Oh yes.
Yep.
Oh, that's
Which-
excellent point, because
That is.
I felt diminished when that first time that happened. I thought, why didn't you see this? As a writer, you should know enough about your character to know that's a load of nonsense. When you're writing, you're telling yourself a story. It's new to you, just the same way it will be to the reader. And you move along, and she's exactly right. You come to some moment, and there's a binary choice, and it's probably even arguably subconscious. But your brain, as a writer, will goof with these. And it's almost random, and then you start writing it, it starts to work, and then you stop and go, holy shit, I just deviated big time here. This is 45 degrees. And
that was what happened. I mean, and it's going to affect the story. It really is, because I had a pivotal moment in the story, an introspective moment where the character was supposed to do a certain thing, and the outcome, his feelings on the outcome were supposed to be loss and pain, and they were guilt. And I went, what the fuck? I had to go back and read it and went, it makes sense. Okay, now I get it, but I did not expect it.
Absolutely. It's your instinct that takes. Is that what that is? That's instinct.
Well,
your writer's instinct.
You're feeling that moment. Yeah, you're feeling that moment. You're understanding that moment because you've outlined it, but in your mind, when you're outlining it, you're glossing it over. When you actually get in the moment and you start pulling these emotional pieces together, your mind will come to conclusions you didn't realize it will come to because you're tapping experience you have somewhere.
Okay, now here's something in a series. We've been pounding the hell out of series. We should probably we should shift back to standalones shortly, but here's something that I wondered about. Two things, in fact. Thing number one is very brief. I live in constant fear that I will get to book something or other, and I'm outlining it and everything looks okay, and I'm not paying attention because I'm a moron, and I start writing this, and I write and I go chapter after chapter, and most of my books are $1 to $120, 120,000 typically, maybe down to 100,000. And here I am stroking along, and I'm getting to the end of the story, and I look down there and it says 62,000, and I'm thinking, oh shit, this is bad. Now I have got a bad problem because my choices are, do I pad the heck out of it and risk reach? Do I go back and incorporate this somehow into the previous book? Well, I can't. The book's the book. It's done and gone. Now
I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that's going to be because I haven't run into that yet. It doesn't mean I won't.
I'm afraid that it would. No,
and
it didn't happen to you.
Okay. And that'd be. And the first instinct I'm going to have is I'm going to want to make that story bigger to make it a complete story. But again, I don't want to reach. I don't want to turn a story into shit because I just want to put out a book. Then
and your stories are really profoundly action oriented, and to go into slow-mo at the end of a Ray Bailey book would be noticed and beaten on. I wouldn't want to be there. I get away with that because, as everyone knows in the entire literary world, my writing style is gentle.
It's a gentle writing style.
It's nuanced.
It's nuanced.
I could probably get away with it. Ray cannot. Glacia might, because you could get away with it to a point, but it's.
I've kind of had it happen actually. I mean, when I got to the end of my first manuscript and I was deciding what to do, with that, and it was over 150,000, and I was like, that's way too long for this genre. If I'm going to publish it, that's wrong. And so I had to reread the whole thing, and there was a stopping point. There was a very good stopping point, actually, about 2/3 of the way through, which was perfect. But then what you're saying, I have, 50,000 words of half a book.
Half a book.
And so the benefit that I had was obviously that the first one wasn't published yet. So, I had to pick it. I had to pick the split point, and then I had to go back and read it again with different eyes and determine if and where there were valid side stories. I was not willing to just add words for word count. right? I'm not going to go back and just add adjectives and adverbs for the sake of making the friggin' thing longer.
Yeah, the padding is a disaster.
Side stories are a whole. We'll cover that in a minute. Yeah, we'll cover
That's
side stories.
Yeah, and I'm glad
That's
you're
a
getting
big
to
one
that
because
yes,
I've got a story on that one. But yeah, I mean that padding would scare the hell out of me because you're right. Rob's right. Most of my books are very action oriented, are very fast paced. If I all of a sudden turn the dial down to 3, people are going to notice. I mean, let's face it. Book number 4 is the first time I'm covering love and loss. Okay, this will tell you the kind of books I write. Literally.
We do not need readers going, "Wow, you mailed that one in. Nice job."
Yeah, right.
I think
Pretty
I'll
much.
pass on your next book, dickhead. It's a danger zone you don't want to get into. But
we go from killing aliens to, you know what? These trees really are pretty. Let's discuss these for 20 minutes. Yeah, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, Chris, I do read about the trees. Like
I pull a Tolkien in the
yeah, she does.
Book.
She even uses it in a photographic, artistic way that I still think is awesome on those covers. But okay, so here's something. The paranoia that goes into not really knowing, especially if you're new to this and you're, perhaps you're writing your first book, guides and ideas are only as good as what you do with them. One person's wisdom is another person's bag of shit. We know that, but it was almost to have come through that and realize that I have a really good series here. It may go 5, it may go 6, I don't know, but I'm comfortable knowing the story that I have to read and knowing that I can get. I may end up having to clip it a little bit to keep from going into the danger zone on writing too much, but I'm not likely going to come up short.
And don't be afraid to put stuff away. If you come up with a story that's short, it might not be short forever.
You're there. You hit the finish line before I got there. Concepts bucket is where I put those there, because some people come up. You know what this feels like, and it's a little bell that goes off that says, "Hey, that's probably not going to be worth a shit right here." But if you put it in your concepts bucket and come back to this another time, and that's a gold mine.
I actually have, about 70 of them in there right now of stories that are, blurbs or small outlines or just notes, something that struck me that would be really cool to try. And I put it in the bucket. It's exactly right. You have the bucket. Go pull from the bucket. But just because you have something in the bucket doesn't mean it's ready to be written.
Yeah.
I mean, do you anticipate moving out of the series realm and into standalones?
I actually just, I got to the point on book 3 that's getting ready to be released that I had breathing time, right? It's out for final proof. I've got nothing to do. And so I was like, now is the time for me to get a firm outline on 4. And so I sat down to do it, and it was just not in me. I could not get my brain to settle into that process and assimilate all, because like now my story is just so complex and I was just not in the right frame of mind to deal with it. And so I was like, well, it's just not the right time. And then I had this absolutely terrible nightmare and woke up 3:30 in the morning, couldn't go back to sleep. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go write. And I got down there, couldn't make anything work with Hawthorne. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll just write down this thing that's sort of like haunting me. And so I start.
Oh, yeah, we've all had those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I start writing out this scene, which is basically, a twist on the nightmare that I had. And I'm weeping. I'm making myself cry the whole time. And then I get to the end of it, and there's that moment of catharsis when you're done writing something that's that emotional. And then I started thinking about it from a different perspective. And I was like, shit, this could be a really cool concept for a novel, just a standalone novel. And I was like, oh, it's probably a novella, maybe 50, 60,000 words. And so I outlined the thing, and I couldn't get it out of my mind that day. And so I just kept writing it. And so I'm like 10K into the thing, and I'm like, shit, this is a whole novel, like 100%. Like I thought going into it that it was going to be this big. And then once I got there, it was this big. It's a whole novel. I just didn't realize it at the time.
Right.
So you're pushing the borders of your concept bucket. You have a project bucket that goes in.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I have stuff like what Ray's talking about too. I have little outlines and ideas and stuff like that. And most of Actually, no, all of them are for standalone projects.
I always assume it's a standalone project until I get into it.
So you
Yeah, that's my
start out
yeah, that's what I do. First thing I do is that's right. I assume it's a standalone until
yeah,
it's no longer a standalone.
until the
Have
characters
you,
go away.
has Ray, have you done, completed, published a standalone since like you started in the?
I have a standalone that is done all the way, plus a first draft is completed. I went over it and I put it away because I looked at it and I went, I'm not quite ready to publish this, but it
Yep.
is done, meaning I don't have any any post questions or issues that I have nagging at me. And this was why I put it away because I was like, wait, I've never done this before. I've got a
Where
story.
was that in the process? Where was that in like if I were to go look at 4 of your books in a series, where did that happen during that process? Was it before, after, or during?
Oh, like
It was between 2 and 3. I sat
Okay.
down. Well, no, after 3 because it was before. Okay, so here's kind of what happened. I finished 3. I was gonna write 4, and then I suffered her problem. I had a story in my head I had to get out. I wrote
Yep.
it, 150,000 words, complete book, all the way the end. Went back through it and reread it, and then I went, you know what? This is a very introspective story. It's an action based. There's a lot of thought into this. There's a lot of things going on that are political that I really want to nail. So I'm going to put it away and let it bake. Then I started on Sleep. So, and that's where I'm at now. That book is sitting in a drawer. I wrote total of 275,000 words of Sleep. Then I sat down and dismantled the whole thing, realizing this is a prequel. This is a different story. This is a different piece. Now I'm at a core book of 150,000 words that I'm actually almost done with to put out the book. But I've got all this other material that I've already written. That was the problem. I've been sitting here writing and spinning my wheel, well, not spinning my wheels, creating stories that were beyond just this book. So I had to sit down and have that moment because we all have it where we go, I have a lot of words written, but it's not a book.
Yeah.
You know,
I
and
had
you
to,
got
I felt like
yeah.
a shit. I went book 1 and book 2 in my Chronicles series. I know what I'm doing. I'm outlining 3, and like a rocket from space, here comes the story idea for River. And I thought, oh, this is much cooler. I'll get that some other time. I need to go write this one now because I'm charmed by the new and shiny
It's the
object that
shiny
comes out of my
piece. That's
weird
right.
dumbass
Yeah.
head. And so,
We all
I outline it and it's working great. I know it's going to be a standalone. Just give me a minute. I want to write my standalone, and I'm gonna do it now
Yep.
because I might forget. So I write my standalone and I send it to my publisher, and good for me. And then I think, oh, whoa. I'll do book 3. Hold on. I had this other weird, completely different genre book. I just want to get this out of the way because if I don't do it now, and I went into another. Jesus, what an idiot. What a no discipline knob. I went through 2 standalones and now I'm finally finishing up book 3. I ought to be flogged or horsewhipped.
No,
Or
it's the same.
keel
I mean,
hauled.
when I sat down and wrote Underground, it wasn't even a story. I started outlining 4 for my series because I'm a good boy and everybody wants to get 4, so I was going to write 4. And for some reason in my head, it just kept saying, you know what? What if there was somebody like me who wasn't far left, somebody who wasn't far right? They were right in the middle of the road. They're very logical. They're very together. How do you take somebody like that and turn them into an extremist? And that would not get out of my head. That's where Underground came from.
Right.
How do you take somebody who will scoff at a suicide bomber, who will laugh at a far lefty or a far righty, who absolutely sticks to that middle, logical, grounded road and just turns his nose up at those people? How do you take them and flip them? And that's where that book idea came from. As I'm doing 4, this idea is going through my head, and I'm like, "Fuck, okay, I'll just write a paragraph." And then I go back, okay, maybe an outline, and then it just
Right.
all of a sudden 4's abandoned, and here comes the book. Yeah.
You got no
And that was
choice. You're
the-
along
yeah.
for the ride. I
Pretty
hate that. I
much.
wish at least get me a seat. Don't
That's
drag
right.
me along on the train where I'm getting
No.
turned bloody on the tracks. At least let me sit down.
Sure.
But I know I fight it. And yeah.
I'm a no discipline shit. I'm gonna write this book, even though I got a cliffhanger after 3, and everybody's waiting for 4. Fuck them, you know. I
There
mean,
you go.
literally. And then I got done that, and I was like, you know what? I can go do 4 because I finished this. I'm gonna put it away. I really want to put out a book, so I'm gonna go do Sleep now, because I'm not gonna touch 4 because I'm still an undisciplined shit. Yeah, that's how that worked. So I
Is
still
that,
have it. You know.
is that really undisciplined though, or is that
I
just
don't know, man.
like come on. I, you know me, right? Like, so, like, I'm trying to like flip this into something that's acceptable. This is not me being an optimist because I'm not.
Acceptable.
Not an
I don't.
optimist. But I mean, maybe this isn't us being undisciplined shits. Maybe this is just us like embracing the artistic side of.
I don't know. I just know that 3 ended with a cliffhanger. I got people threatening bodily harm, and I'm out in the fucking literary fields going wee as I sniff the flowers and run around and dance, literally.
Flowers and butterflies. So
I know.
right,
So,
I'm in the exact same place. It's weird how we're like mirroring each other, right? Because like I'm at the end of
Right.
3, and I've got this new shiny thing that's like scampering about in front of me. That's
Yep.
like write me, write me, write me.
Right,
And,
me.
like,
I'm a better story. I'm a better story. Your talents are wasted on that shitbag whore of a story.
I know,
Come
right?
hang out with me because I'm pretty and I'm nice and I'm virtuous.
Oh no.
What a load of nonsense. Or quite the reverse.
Oh yeah, no. This one is definitely like this is. It would probably be shelved in horror, like.
It's
So,
rationalization. It's like I do the same thing. It's like, well, you've already got 250,000 words in sleep, so let's finish that book. And then you know what? You've already got material for the next book after that. So we can, oh, but wait, you put away that one book you already wrote. So you don't have to write.
Do you hear
Yeah,
the
why-
antithetical laying around, orbiting this conversation right now that we talked about way earlier in the series?
Oh, yeah.
It something just springs to mind, and if anybody was listening to the podcasts before, they'll know we went down this path. As I hear these, I got to get this, I've got to write that, I've got to write this, I've got to write that. The one thing that's absent in all of this discussion apparently doesn't apply to us. Ain't no writer's block at AIC. We get after it.
And that's the thing. It's not. Can I write a story? It's which story am I going to write?
Yep.
That's really what it comes down to.
But you know what? There's a weird little neurosis to this compulsion to write. And I tell people, they say it surprises them, people that I meet that say, oh, I didn't know you were an author. And my standard line is, oh, I didn't either. Yuck, yuck, yuck.
Yeah, but, I know. I've done that. Yeah.
But the compulsion part, and I have to tell them, writing a book is damned hard work. It is nowhere near as cool and charming and literary and artistic. And I feel like a flower. No, it's I need to take a shower. I am a piece of shit. I've wasted a bunch of time doing this when I'm supposed to be. I'm neglecting something or someone in my life because I'm doing the rattle on that keyboard, and it's not easy. It's a pain in the ass, frankly. If I would have known it was this hard, it would never started in the first place. But here we are.
Books, we don't live our life. We live in our head. During that time we're writing our book, we are not living our life. We are not out there doing things and living our life. We are living in our head.
And while we are living our life, we're trying to figure out more ways that we can go back to living in our head.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, and that's what we do. And a lot of it, some of it's stress, some of it's attraction, some of it's neuroses. It's all over the place. I mean, it really depends on the moment, honestly.
We sound like a bunch of goddamn wackos. That's what we sound like.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. We got issues. If you're an author, you have issues. This is just the natural. Yeah. If you could sit down and you can write a book and you can write loss, betrayal, action, hate, love, you are opening up that little black box inside of you and you are letting that shit shine out. All that crap that happened in your life. And if you're good at it, that box is full of shit. It is full of crap from your life because that's how we lived. This is not, we don't make up half this shit. We just grab a kernel of something that happened to us and explode it on the page. Really, that's what it comes out to be. And it sometimes surprises us how it reacts.
Yeah.
And that's true.
But I firmly believe that there's something profoundly wrong with people who write successfully.
Oh, yeah.
Well, of course.
Somebody likes your book, and they don't see it. They shouldn't. They look at a book like we all used to look at books before we started writing them, and it's this wonderful little paper window into some better, cool place. I don't read the book in those days thinking, I wonder what the impetus was. I wonder what the author went through to come. I didn't give a shit. I wanted to read the story. I'm immersing in it. I do what I'm supposed to do. I suspend disbelief, and I go into this world to be entertained.
The book.
Yeah, I want to go live in there. That's what the damn thing is for. And I put it down and I look at the author and I'd say, I'm grateful because I'm glad you wrote this. He or she had her shit or his shit together, and this is pretty cool. It goes on the shelf, but when the moment you do that, there the story behind those little stories and the stuff that Ray just said, these little spider webs of weirdness and assholery that runs around inside of our collective experience is the fuel behind some of that stuff, particularly the emotional stuff.
That's what did Faulkner say? It was easy to write. Just put a piece of paper in the typewriter and bleed. That's literally what he said. And it's true. We do. I mean, in all honesty, when I wrote my piece, the excerpt that I put up on Facebook, the one I share with Glacia, I literally was, it was a moment. I mean, it really was. I was there and I was feeling it. My stomach dropped and the whole thing, and that's just what we do, And
You
that's
can't
not the other
you can't
end.
create that though. If that emotion isn't endemic to you, you do. You are drawing on experience because that's where your emotions live. All they're doing is borrowing from your memory. They are always there, and you don't have to go very far to grab one. And it's like lifeblood to a writer to write those scenes, to connect that empathic.
You can't mimic it. You have to draw off of something. You can't just. You'll know if somebody tries to mimic it, they'll never get it right.
Yep.
It'll just be a little off.
If you're not pissed off, or if you don't cry, or if you don't burst out with laughter at some of this stuff, it's not narcissism. If you're writing properly, you're translating some profound emotional experience, wash it any way you like, and it ends up on that page. You're conveying properly, but along the way, we're still human and we're affected by it. I go back and read some passages from Specimen 959, and I grin at him and go, that was cool. I like that. I like that bit. Sometimes I read it and I'm speechless because I think, what a shitty deal I took these people through. And no wonder why they're sad and miserable. That's what it's supposed to do.
But it's true. You go back and you see some things you look at and you cringe, and some things you look at and go, God damn, I can write. It's just amazing how that works. Yeah. There are literally some things I look at going, how the fuck in retarded hell did I let that pass? How did I not write it like this? Or how did I not just burn that fucking page? And there are some things I go, that was kind of clever. That was cool. And it was just, you do that. That's what you do. As a writer, you go back and look at your shit and you experience it again, except in a different way. The different way is from the writing standpoint, because you're being overly critical on your own stuff. We all are. We all are overly critical on our own shit.
Yes, we are. And a series is a wonderful playground to you can go a lot farther. You have room, and we take advantage of it. I say, you know what? I don't have to tell you everything about this person. Nope. This character is going to be revealed to you over time because I can, and it's better if I do. Hallelujah for series.
There are things that I didn't reveal in book 1 or book 2 that I've revealed in book 3, and there are some things that I won't reveal to book 5, and I know what they are. I know what the kernels of them are. I don't know how they're going to play out yet, but I know what they are because that's how we do things. But the biggest question I get asked from people, because apparently they love asking stupid questions, or non-stupid questions in this case, it's actually a very good question. How do I know? How do I know when I'm writing, when it's a book, when it's a series, when it's a spinoff? How do I know? And the honest, it's kind of like when you're in love. You just know. You know. It's not you can't sit down and go, I'm going to write a series. Or I'm going to write a series that's going to include a spin-off that's going to include if you do, you're doing it, you're kind of doing it backwards. Series are born from stories that don't end, or stories in a universe where you can continue on. Spin-offs, I just experienced this. Book 4, I introduce a new character, and that character is great, and that character is awesome, and I love playing with that character because it's part of the book. It was the cliffhanger in 3. And I sat there and I wrote it, and then I went to look at 5, because 5 now changed because of 4 changed. And I realized that's a square peg in a round hole. I have a character that so outshadows the rest of that story that I can't put it in 5.
veer off and make it its
So
own.
now I have a character for a new story because if I put it in 5, it's going to overshadow the characters I already have. It's not a better character, it just is a different character and it's engaging unto itself. And to try to add it with the other ones is just, it's almost like putting too much vanilla in a cake. You know, it's too much.
Mhm.
Yeah, you have like
Readers-
two entire, story.
Exactly.
There's not one that is secondary to another. When you have those that are
Right.
equally dynamic and equally entertaining and equally whole, you are. I mean, like you have to realistically. I mean, I've had the same experience. I realized that there's so much more to my antagonist than what I can. I cannot concentrate on what the real story arc is in my current series and do that character justice by
Well, I would be remiss unless I asked you a question because as I was talking about reveal, you got the 5-year-old look, which is really happy and you're bouncing in your chair and you're over there. So what's the deal? What's going on?
I don't remember.
Okay, because I was
It
talking
kills
about
me when she
revealing.
does that, by the way.
I know,
complained
right?
to her about
because I'm
this,
sitting
and she
there
just-
watching her as I'm
Yeah.
talking about it.
No,
You know, where we're talking about revealing in different books, different parts, different aspects of the character, and she's over there going,
yeah, something hit
and
her.
I'm just like,
something
okay,
hit her.
I gotta figure that.
Yeah, I'm
Now
glad
it's
you
gone.
said that, but it doesn't surprise me that she's flipping us off saying, sorry, I don't remember
I
up
know.
your
Yeah,
ass.
all
Oh no no
Isn't
no!
that-
Oh dude, really? It's just it leaves
I understand.
right.
down.
Now,
Guys.
now quick though, here's something as your antagonist story, Ray hits on something he's getting ready to do 5 and he's just finished with 4, but this character, it compels something else. New writer listening to this, if you get these deviations, I thought about this too, and it was actually from the wrong side because I was terribly paranoid about running out of story at the 50,000 word mark.
Right.
And I thought about options and what should I do to avoid this? How do I deal with it if I run into it? There's nothing wrong with a side story, a spin-off, if you will. Doesn't have to be 150,000 words. You can get a really good side story in a novella. And so that is always available to you. Don't shy away from spin-offs or side stories because they run the risk of not being a big, epic, full-length novel that Tolstoy would appreciate. It can be a short story.
And I did that. I didn't know it was going to be a spin-off till I spent a day and wrote a short story. I wrote a scene with the new character and how I wanted it, and then I sat down and wrote 3 paragraphs, just 3 paragraphs, just of this particular character, and I realized this can go on. This is not done. And I went, okay, this is going to be its own thing.
And when
At
you
that
start on
point, I
that
realized
path,
it.
and again, your moment of when and you're right, it's unique and it's certainly personal to each of us. You get to that spot, damn good and well at that point, just like you're falling in love with somebody. You don't have to describe it and you don't need it described. You just know. But your moment and Glacia's moment and my moment, there isn't a proscribed point.
Nope.
In other words, you haven't failed if it happens early in your thought process or story, or whether it happens in the middle or at the end. It happens when it happens, and you know it, you recognize it, and you pursue it.
And honestly, I tried to fight it. I actually wanted to put the book out as a standalone. Then I wanted to put the book out as a trilogy because I was fighting it. I thought I was doing it wrong. I thought I was doing too much. I thought I was undisciplined and I was trying to take a story further than I needed to, and it was going to blow up in my face. So I had the same problem of maybe I'm just going to run out of story. Maybe this isn't as good as it's going to be, or maybe this isn't going to go as further as I want it to, despite what I've already outlined. And I actually went out and released the book first as a trilogy piece because I was like, that's all I'm going to write. I'm just going to forget the rest and just try to put as much into the trilogy because I know I have enough material for that. And that was my mistake. That was my first mistake because I didn't know any better. And you trust your story.
Exactly. Trust yourself to follow it properly. Now, before we wrap this episode, I want to go into opinion mode.
Go ahead.
And I want you to tell me, and this is likes and dislikes, if you had unlimited time and unlimited resources, and what do you prefer? What is more rewarding to you as an author, to do a nice big full length, completed from beginning to end standalone, or to follow that longer torturous path of a series. What do you like, both of you, and go. What do you prefer? Doesn't have to be right, wrong, good, or bad. Just tell me.
Depends on the story, because there's some stories you can't stop, and that's the problem.
You're not going to beg off of that dumbass answer, and don't even start, Glacier, because you're getting ready to do this.
Okay, so yeah, the pain in the ass series. The series is a pain in the ass. Let's face it, the series is a pain in the ass.
They are.
Because when you get done 3 or 4 books, you got to go back and reread shit, because you're going to get it wrong in book number 4 and 5, because your continuity's all fucked up. So you got to go out to your beta readers, rely on them, because they have a whole different side of the story that you don't even know about. Because people, once you start writing, you read differently. You change the way you read books. That's an unfortunate truth. It is. You change the way you read. You change your dynamic of how you experience a story. So
what do you enjoy, though? What do you enjoy more? Just make your choice based on likes and dislikes, and it's no big deal if they change next week. What do you like?
Right now, she likes.
She says standalone.
I'm going to say series because I get more time to tell the story. Yeah, I don't feel rushed.
Two authors, 50-50 answers. That illustrates the point. There is no right and there ain't no wrong. It's whatever what you're with right now, that's what you go with. And don't feel as though you're going in the wrong direction. It's not what you're supposed to do. That's exactly what you're supposed to do, is where your storyline and your talent leads you.
And that's what it comes down to. It's about the story. And you'll know the story. You will. And I have met people who have done short stories they've turned into novels, short stories they turned into series. You know, I mean, these little short stories you write just to get it out of your head may one day turn into a novel. You never know.
River started as a short. That was a short story that I sat on the shelf for a long, long time and thought, oh, wait a minute, I was going to write that into a real book. And I did. But it took a while to get back to it, right? There's the concepts bucket. Keep it handy.
Just because we write a story doesn't mean we release it right away.
Correct.
I mean, there are stories and ideas that are really awesome, but we're not ready for them yet, or I haven't put my big boy pants on because I'm not ready to tackle that one yet.
Yep.
And honestly, that's what it comes down to. There are story ideas I look at and I go, I'm not grown up enough for this one yet. I have not hit that point.
Not have the chops for that.
I don't have the chops for it yet. I mean, there are stories I have that I want to tell that I can't. I look at it and go, if I do it right now, I don't think I'll be able to nail it. Not like I want to.
There's some discipline. So, there's discipline in writing right there, in action.
Well, it's realization. It's self-assessment. You have to know yourself.
Good topic. Good episode.
Oh, agreed.
Cool.
All right, let me kill this one.